"You don't belong in seat 2A. This ticket must be stolen." That was the first thing flight attendant Sophia Bennett said to Caleb Sterling, her voice sharp enough to cut through the murmurs in the crowded cabin. No greeting, no courtesy, just an accusation thrown like a spear in front of first-class passengers, many of whom now turned to stare. Before we dive deeper into this true story of power, bias, and accountability, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and if you believe in fair skies for every passenger, tap that subscribe button, and share this video now. Back to the moment that changed everything. It was 8:15 a.m. on a Monday morning at Los Angeles International Airport. Skylight Flight SE-247, bound for New York, had just opened first-class boarding. But the process was already behind schedule. Passengers were packed into the narrow jet bridge like sardines, and stress clung to the cabin air like static. A glitch in the payment system had caused multiple card rejections during online check-in, forcing flight attendants to manually verify reservations using handheld devices. Devices that lagged, froze, and often misread. Caleb Sterling stepped into first class wearing a fitted black hoodie, charcoal jeans, and pristine sneakers. He carried a leather duffel and a folded boarding pass that read, "Sterling, Caleb, Seat 2A, Priority 1 Clearance." He said nothing as he stepped forward, his posture calm, eyes scanning for his seat. But Sophia Bennett blocked his path with her arm. "Sir, I'll need to see your boarding pass." Caleb handed it over wordlessly. She looked at it for less than 2 seconds before her. Tone shifted. "This doesn't look right. You're not on the manifest. This seat is reserved for paying passengers." Caleb blinked slowly, then said, "That's my name. That's my seat." "I paid." Lucas Reed, the lead attendant, stepped over from the galley, glancing at Sophia's tablet. "He's not listed," he muttered. And, from across the aisle came another voice, sharper, colder. "He probably stole the ticket," said Ethan Ward, a white businessman in a tailored navy suit, sipping coffee with one hand and scrolling his phone with the other. Several heads turned. Sophia stiffened. "Sir, if you could please move to the back of the plane, we'll sort this out later." Caleb didn't move, his eyes locked onto hers. "I didn't steal anything. Check again." Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. "We've had issues with payment fraud today, and your platinum card was rejected at the kiosk." "Because your terminal is outdated," Caleb replied. "Your system is broken." "I'm not." Sophia folded her arms. "Without verification. I can't allow you to sit in 2A. Then verify it," he said, voice still level, tone edged with restrained authority. Just behind him stood Mateo Cruz, his assistant, already recording on Caleb's phone, discreetly but deliberately. Harper Lee, a young black journalist seated in 3C, had started filming too, her lens now centered on Sophia's expression. Ethan Ward leaned into the aisle. "I've flown Skylight for years. I know the kind of people who sit here, no offense, but jeans and a hoodie." Caleb turned his head slowly. "The kind of people?" "Mr. Ward, what kind is that?" Ethan shrugged. "The kind that doesn't. Steal boarding passes, that's all I'm saying." Harper zoomed in on Ethan's face as he smirked. Jack Hayes, seated in 1D, cleared his throat. "Is there a problem here?" Sophia held up the pass. "The system's rejecting his name. He's not on the list." "Because your list is wrong," Caleb said. "Try checking it again, manually, or better yet, ask for identification." "You skipped that step," Sophia bristled. "I don't need to be told how to do my job," Lucas interjected. "Let's just move him back until we can confirm." Caleb stayed planted, his presence as calm as it was unmovable. "If you touch me, I promise you'll regret it." "Check the list." Mateo's voice came quietly from behind. "Sir, audio's rolling." This is all being logged." Ethan scoffed. "Oh, great. Now he's recording us." Harper responded from her seat, loud enough for the row to hear. "Because this keeps happening and you think you can get away with it," Lucas muttered to Sophia. "Just get security." Caleb turned slightly, speaking into the phone Mateo held. "Cruz, record the names. Sophia Bennett, Lucas Reed, Ethan Ward. Accusations. Made without evidence. Denial of service. Clothing-based profiling." "Get it all." Sophia flinched. "Profiling. That's a serious claim." "So is theft," Caleb replied, "which is what you accused me of." Harper leaned forward. "Just to be clear, he hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't threatened anyone, and he's standing in front of a seat with his name on it." Ethan shook his head. "Look, we've all been waiting to depart. Let's not delay the flight for one guy playing dress-up." Caleb's gaze didn't break. "You don't know who I am, but you will." At 22, Caleb had been denied a business-class seat on a domestic flight simply because he wore joggers and a hoodie. The agent never looked at his ticket, just glanced at his clothes and said, "Try the gate for economy." That quiet shame sat in his chest for years. It didn't break him. It built him. It lit the fire that would one day own the skies. Sophia crossed. Her arms. "You're not in our system. Then your system is broken. But I'm not." Jack looked at Caleb and said, "This feels off. Let me speak to the captain." Caleb nodded. "Please do." Mateo tapped the phone. Timestamp 8:117 a.m. All statements logged. Ethan leaned back, chuckling to himself. "You people always play the race card. When things don't go your way." Harper's voice came next, steady but sharp. "And you always play gatekeeper when you feel threatened. That's why I'm filming." Lucas raised his hand to stop her. "Ma'am, recording isn't permitted without consent." Harper didn't blink. "Neither is discrimination." Sophia's jaw tightened. "I've asked you to leave. Final warning." Caleb finally stepped closer, close enough for his words to cut through the pressurized air. "You just made the worst mistake of your career, Ms. Bennett. And I'm going to correct it. Right here, right now." He turned to Mateo. "Text the number. Begin verification with corporate." Mateo's fingers moved fast. Jack returned from the galley, concerned deep in his voice. "I spoke with the pilot," he suggested. "You all double-check the printed manifest, not just the tablet." Sophia scoffed. "The manifest was printed before the update." "Then that's your fault," Jack said, "not his." Ethan waved his hand dismissively. "This is insane. Can we just remove him already?" Harper zoomed in. Mateo whispered, "Sir, message sent." Caleb exhaled. "Good, in about 4 minutes. She won't be working here anymore." Silence hit the cabin like a dropped curtain. For the first time, Sophia looked shaken. Ethan stopped smiling. Lucas stared at the device in his hand. Suddenly unsure, Harper's camera remained fixed. Caleb reached into his pocket, unfolded his ID, and placed it beside the boarding pass. "My name is Caleb Sterling. I own 40% of Skylight Airlines, and I will not be spoken to like a criminal because I'm wearing a hoodie." Sophia stared at the ID in Caleb's hand, her lips parting slightly as if she couldn't decide whether to deny or deflect. But before she could say a word, Lucas blurted, "That can't be right. I didn't see that name." His voice wasn't confident anymore. It cracked under the weight of scrutiny, of the dozen or so eyes now watching every move, every word. Sophia looked from the ID to the printed boarding pass, then to the tablet in her hand, where the manifest still hadn't updated because of the glitchy software that was failing them both. She took a step back but didn't apologize. Instead, she doubled down, voice sharper now. "Anyone could print that. We've had counterfeit passes before." Caleb didn't flinch. "Scan it, cross-check it, or don't. Either way, the decision you make in the next 30 seconds will be remembered for the rest of your career." Ethan laughed again, this time forced. He's bluffing. Nobody walks in here looking like that and turns out to be a billionaire. Look at him. Hoodie, sneakers, no watch, no briefcase, no polished look. This is all for attention. But Jack Hayes, seated again in 1D, leaned forward and said calmly, "And what if he's not bluffing? What if the reason he doesn't need the briefcase or the flash is because he already owns a piece of the sky you're flying through?" Sophia's jaw tensed. "We are following protocol," Mateo's voice cut in, clear and steady. "That protocol includes confirming ID before removal. You skipped that. You also accused a verified passenger of theft on camera." Harper continued filming, her hand remarkably steady as she captured Sophia's hesitation and Ethan's smug expression. "Just say you made a mistake," Harper offered, her voice quieter but no less firm. "Or say nothing. That camera will speak for you." Sophia's fingers hovered over her tablet. Lucas leaned closer, whispering something to her, and Caleb caught just enough of it to freeze in place. "You followed what they trained us. Baggy clothes, hoodie, red flag. Remember?" Caleb's eyes narrowed. "Say that again." Lucas blinked. "Nothing." "No," Caleb said, stepping slightly closer. "You said red flag, baggy clothes. That's your internal rule, isn't it? Profile passengers based on attire." Lucas's mouth opened, then closed. He looked down. Sophia crossed her arms defensively now. "It's not profiling, it's intuition." "No," Jack said, "it's discrimination." And with that word hanging thick in the air, a heavy silence swept over the cabin. Ethan tried to cut through it with sarcasm, muttering, "So now we're canceling common sense, too." Harper didn't look away from her screen. "We're canceling ignorance, one flight at a time." Sophia raised her voice again. "This is a matter of security, not fashion." But Lucas, hands slightly trembling, admitted, "We were trained to watch for patterns. Sometimes attire correlates to fraud. That's what we were told." Caleb looked directly at him. "That was your training? That people in casual wear are more likely to steal tickets?" Lucas nodded once, miserably. "Unwritten but enforced," Harper whispered. "That's going viral in 5 minutes." Sophia's posture stiffened as she turned toward Lucas. "You weren't supposed to say that." Caleb turned to Mateo. "Make sure that line's saved, unwritten but enforced." Mateo nodded, marked, and clipped. Jack stood again and faced Sophia. "You owe this man an apology, and not a whispered one." Sophia's cheeks flushed. "I'm doing my job," Caleb replied. "No, you're hiding behind your job to justify your bias." "Those are different things," Sophia scoffed. "You think you can just bark orders because you're rich?" Caleb's voice dropped, deep and steady. "I don't have to bark. I only need to speak the truth. And your behavior is proving it." Ethan chuckled again, but less confidently now. "You people always play the victim card." Mateo turned toward him. Phone. "Still recording." "Repeat that?" Ethan stood up halfway from his seat. "This is absurd. Can we just get on with the flight? Why are we all being held hostage for this drama?" Harper raised her phone toward Ethan and said, "Because your words are Exhibit B." Jack looked toward the cockpit. "If this doesn't stop, I'm going up front again. This is going to end badly." "For the airline," Sophia snapped. "Then go. This isn't your concern." Jack turned toward her. "It became my concern the moment you insulted a passenger in front of a cabin full of witnesses. I've been flying Skylight for 15 years, and I've never seen a breakdown like this." At 24, just 2 years into his first major software acquisition, Caleb was denied a flight upgrade in San Francisco because a gate agent mistook him for a delivery assistant. She ignored his boarding group number, glanced at his sweatshirt, and said, "Packages go through freight, not first." Caleb didn't argue. he upgraded his company instead. That incident became a quiet benchmark. Never again be mistaken for anything less than the owner of the building. Sophia exhaled sharply, stepping toward the galley. "Fine, I'm calling security." But before she could reach the phone, Caleb said, "Do that, and I'll make my first official act as owner to terminate you on the spot." Lucas turned to him, voice trembling. "You really own part of Skylight?" Caleb pulled up a contact on his phone, showing the company logo and an internal contact ID labeled Board Liaison. "Direct line, 140%, Mr. Reed, more than enough to write a new policy or end a career." Sophia hesitated by the galley phone. Harper whispered, "That sound you hear?" "That's the echo of consequences coming down the aisle," Mateo added. "Corporate will have audio, video, names, timestamps." "This isn't he said. She said. "It's all documented." Ethan scoffed. "You're all just performing for a camera now. This is ridiculous." Jack looked at him. "No, Mr. Ward. This is what accountability looks like when it walks in wearing a hoodie." Lucas slumped slightly into the wall, guilt slowly overtaking his defensiveness. Sophia took her hand off the phone. Caleb turned slightly and faced the entire first-class cabin. "Let me be absolutely clear. What happened here today was not a misunderstanding. It was a pattern, repeated and protected by silence. And I'm done being silent." Sophia didn't move, didn't blink, as Caleb's words echoed through the cabin, quieting even the most restless passengers. Her eyes flitted to the phone in Caleb's hand, then to Harper's camera still fixed on her, and finally to the crumpled boarding pass now half-folded on the galley cart beside her. Lucas stepped forward again, voice low but strained. "Mr. Sterling, if I may, I think there's a reason your name didn't show." Caleb turned slowly to face him. "Go on." Lucas's fingers trembled as he held up the crew's manifest tablet, its screen still glitching. When the kiosk rejected your card, it flagged the transaction as incomplete. Sometimes, when that happens, the system auto-bumps the name to economy until it's manually corrected, if Sophia entered it that way. Caleb raised his eyebrows. "Are you saying this is a system flaw or human error?" Lucas glanced sideways. "Both." Sophia snapped, her voice cracking under pressure. "I didn't bump him. I just marked it for re-verification. I didn't know it would default to economy," Harper whispered loud enough to be heard. "So you did change his seat," Sophia flushed. "That's not what I said," Caleb pressed gently but firmly. "You're saying my name was in the system until you moved it?" Sophia's voice wavered. "There was a payment issue. I followed procedure. I didn't delete your name, I flagged it." "Which led to you accusing me of theft," Caleb said flatly. "Which led to your colleague calling me a fake," Harper added, "and another passenger implying I didn't belong," Caleb concluded. Ethan exhaled audibly. "Are we really still doing this?" "Mistakes happen. Let it go. No harm, no foul." Caleb looked at him. "You called me a fraud, Mr. Ward. That's not a mistake. That's your character speaking without consent." Ethan rolled his eyes and stood, adjusting his tie. "Fine. I'll move to the business cabin until this circus ends." Jack stood with him. "No, you're going to sit right there and listen to how damage is undone." Sophia clutched the galley counter, visibly unraveling. "I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to what?" Harper asked gently. "Didn't mean to follow a bias protocol that isn't written but is deeply embedded?" Lucas spoke up again, this time steadier. "We weren't told to profile people, but we were told to trust. Patterns, unspoken rules. If the clothes don't match the cabin, recheck the manifest. That's how it starts." Caleb's voice lowered. "And how many people has it ended for?" "At 26, during a tech conference in Singapore." Caleb had booked a VIP lounge pass after a keynote speech that landed him on the cover of a major business magazine, still wearing his hoodie and backpack from the stage. He entered the lounge and was stopped by a uniformed attendant who asked him to wait for the real pass holder. No one intervened. No one apologized. He left, sat on a bench outside, and quietly decided that one day no one would ever dare question if he belonged again. Not because of a badge, but because he'd owned the system itself. Silence fell again. Sophia glanced down, her eyes unfocused. "You were dressed so casually. I thought you were trying to slip past." "That's not what you thought," Caleb replied. "What you thought was that I didn't belong in 2A because I wasn't wearing a suit. That's not caution. That's assumption, and it costs people their dignity." Lucas swallowed hard. "I'll accept whatever consequence comes, but I want to help fix it." Caleb nodded, his voice like steel under velvet. "You'll have that chance. But today, the first consequence lands where the first insult began." Harper's camera stayed steady as Caleb took a step towards Sophia. "I'm giving you one opportunity to admit your mistake, not just to me, but to this cabin, to your coworkers, and to yourself. What you do next tells me if this is retraining or termination." Sophia's breath caught. She looked around the cabin. No one came to her defense. Lucas looked away. Ethan folded his arms. Even the pilot hadn't appeared to shield her, and in that moment her defiance crumbled. "I mislogged the ticket," she said quietly. "The system flagged it and I thought it was fake. So I flagged it as economy. I thought I was doing the right thing." Caleb nodded slowly. "Thank you for finally telling the truth," she added, voice barely audible. "But I didn't do it because of your race. I did it because we've had passengers sneak into first class before." "And how many of those were wearing jeans and hoodies?" Harper asked, or looked like him. Sophia didn't answer. Caleb turned to Mateo. "Mark that timestamp. 8.19. AM verbal admission of improper manifest handling. Passenger misclassification resulting in public accusation." Mateo tapped the screen. Logged. Ethan groaned. "This is getting theatrical. Next thing. You'll tell me as he's going to fire her right here in front of everyone." Caleb turned slowly, expression unreadable. "Actually, Mr. Ward, that's exactly what I'm going to do." Ethan blinked. "Wait, you're serious?" Jack leaned in. He wasn't joking when he said 40% shareholder. "This man can rewrite the sky," Harper whispered, and he just did. Sophia's eyes widened. "Wait, Mr. Sterling, please." "I didn't mean—" Caleb raised a hand. "Not here. Not now. You'll get a fair explanation. But the moment you accused me without verification, you violated the integrity of this airline and every protocol we're meant to uphold. As of this minute, you're relieved of all passenger-facing duties." Lucas stepped forward, unsure. "What about?" "We'll talk in the galley," Caleb said. "For now, take her badge and headset." The silence was broken only by the soft clicking of Mateo's phone as he logged each word. Harper lowered her camera, visibly moved. Jack sat down slowly, exhaling. "Well, I've never seen a corporate reckoning delivered this quickly," Ethan muttered. "Power trip?" Caleb looked at him one last time. "No, Mr. Ward, this is a correction, one that should have happened a long time ago." Then he turned to Harper. "Thank you for documenting what many would have denied." She nodded. "Truth needs witnesses." Caleb looked at the other passengers. "And so does justice." The remaining crew stood frozen, unsure what to do next. Lucas clutched the manifest tablet, still buzzing from the incomplete update. Mateo looked up from the phone. Corporate alert acknowledged. Legal confirmed. You have full executive discretion. Caleb took one last look around the cabin, at the rows of leather seats, the quiet faces, the weight of what had just occurred, and nodded. Then, let's make it official. And with that, he stepped toward the galley, ready to finish what had been started in full view of a cabin that would never forget this flight. Sophia stood motionless for a moment in the narrow space between the galley and seat 2A, her breath coming faster as the tension in the cabin deepened. Then, without another word, she turned and reached for the cabin intercom handset, pressing the button to summon gate security. Her voice was tight, but loud enough to carry. "This is Flight Attendant Bennett requesting immediate personnel support. I need removal of a disruptive passenger." The silence that followed was swift and stunned. Caleb didn't raise his voice. He simply turned to face the cabin again and said clearly, "You all heard that? She just called security on a verified shareholder of this airline." A ripple moved through the seated passengers. Jack Hayes stood again, the lines in his face hardening. "That's enough. This is harassment now, plain and simple." Sophia turned, headset still clutched in one hand. "I'm following safety procedures. You're following fear," Jack said. "Not facts," Ethan Ward, still seated near the front bulkhead, scoffed. Audibly, "I'm sorry, but this is absurd. Can we just let the professionals do their job? If he's really who he says he is, why doesn't he just show some ID and sit down like the rest of us?" Harper's voice cut through the tension, unwavering. "Because that's not what this is about anymore. This isn't about a seat. This is about dignity, and how easily some of you tear it down with a glance." Sophia opened her mouth to speak, but her words caught. Mateo, still recording with Caleb's phone, stepped forward slightly. The call was logged. Security is en route. Any physical intervention now will be a liability. Caleb nodded once. "And every word spoken here will go into the official log, including what comes next." Sophia's headset buzzed faintly in her palm, but she didn't answer it. Instead, she turned to Lucas. "Tell them he's not in the manifest." Lucas, sweating under the collar now, shook his head slowly. "I can't. I just got the updated printout." He held up a slip of paper trembling in his hand. "Caleb Sterling, Seat 2A, First Class, Priority 1, verified." The cabin collectively inhaled. Harper turned the camera back on Sophia. "Now, do you want to amend your statement?" Ethan stood. "Oh, come on. He probably paid someone to fix the manifest." Harper swung her camera toward him. "Say that louder for the lawsuit." Ethan stepped back down into his seat, his bravado melting into something uglier, cornered frustration. Sophia, still silent, turned to the new manifest and scanned it, her eyes locking on Caleb's name like it had betrayed her. "I don't understand how it updated. It wasn't there before." "Because you moved it," Caleb said, calm and deliberate. "And now that it's been restored, so has the truth. But we're not done yet." Harper's voice was soft but sharp. "Then let's finish this story right." Jack took a step toward the aisle. "You should probably cancel that security call before it gets worse," Mateo added. "Or let them come. Let them see the footage before they touch a single person." At 28, just after finalizing a $200 million acquisition for his firm, Caleb had arrived at a private terminal in Phoenix for a charter flight home. He waited quietly in the corner, dressed in his usual jeans and zip hoodie, when a staffer approached and said, "This lounge is reserved for executives, sir." He'd smiled and replied, "I am the executive." But no apology came. Instead, the staffer said, "You don't look like it." That moment didn't trigger anger. It triggered strategy. Caleb left quietly, but by the end of that fiscal quarter, he had secured board-level access to that very charter firm. It was the last time anyone questioned. If he belonged near a runway, Sophia opened her mouth again. But this time, what came out wasn't an order or an excuse. It was the truth. We were told during training to watch for red flags, and yes, baggy clothes, hoodies, no visible status markers. Those were on the list. The cabin went still. No one breathed. Harper whispered. "Got it," as her phone stayed trained on Sophia's face. Verbal admission. Profiling directive. 8:21 a.m. Caleb stood straighter. You just said out loud what too many passengers have only guessed, that your training isn't written down, but it's alive and well. You see a hoodie, and you see a threat. Lucas looked ill. It wasn't supposed to be like that. It was just guidance. Jack responded before Caleb could. Guidance that targets people who don't dress like you expect. That's not safety. It's selective exclusion, Harper added, and you all just saw how fast that guidance turns into accusations. Sophia's headset buzzed again. This time she picked it up, said a few rushed words, then hung up. Security is standing down. They were told it's resolved, Mateo said. Good, because if they had touched Mr. Sterling, you'd be answering to legal. Right now, not just corporate. Sophia looked smaller now, her body, her voice, her presence shrinking under the collective weight of what she had said. Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. So what now? He gets to fire her and parade around like a hero? Caleb glanced at him. No parade, just accountability. He turned to face the cabin once more. You've all witnessed what happens when a silent rule is broken open. I didn't come here to make a scene. I came here to take my seat. But because of a hoodie and an outdated rule book, I was accused of theft, profiled, and nearly removed. Harper turned her camera briefly to the other passengers, capturing faces, some embarrassed, some angry, some quietly nodding. Jack said quietly, You don't owe them an apology, Caleb, but they owe you one. Lucas stepped forward. I do. I'm sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have checked the paper manifest first. Sophia didn't speak. She just set her headset down on the galley tray beside the now wrinkled boarding pass and looked away. Mateo said, We'll begin internal review immediately. The footage is clear. The logs are secure. Skylight will have no choice but to respond. Caleb nodded once. They will, and I'll make sure of it. Caleb didn't rush. He stood still in the center aisle of first class, letting the weight of the silence settle over every leather seat and overhead bin. His voice, when it came, was quiet, but no one mistook it for soft. You've heard the accusations. You've seen the proof. You felt the silence that followed. So let me speak now, not as a passenger, not even as a shareholder, but as a man who's been in this seat 1,000 times and denied it more times than I care to remember. He turned towards Sophia, who had not lifted her head since setting her headset down. Ms. Bennett, your actions today did not begin with a system error. They began with an assumption. You looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. You turned a boarding glitch into a character judgment, and then you spoke those assumptions into existence, in front of witnesses, into a phone that's now in legal custody, and on a camera that's already time-stamped and archived. Sophia didn't speak. Caleb continued, unwavering. Effective immediately, you are terminated from all active roles within Skylight Airlines. Your conduct violated protocol, ethics, and the most basic human decency required to serve the flying public. He turned toward Lucas. Mr. Reed, you supported her claim without confirmation. You cited a manifest you hadn't rechecked. You made comments about my appearance that implied economic fraud. As a lead attendant, your responsibility was not just to serve. It was to lead. You failed at both. Your employment is not terminated today, but your record will reflect formal reprimand, and you will be reassigned to compliance review under internal supervision. Lucas nodded once. His jaw clenched. Caleb turned to the passengers. Let it be known. This isn't about punishment. This is about restoration. You cannot fix what you're unwilling to name today. We name it. Then his eyes found Ethan Ward, who sat with his arms folded, his posture defensive but visibly rattled. Mr. Ward, you are not an employee. I cannot fire you, but I can and will Invoke Skylight's flight discretion protocol, effective immediately. You are banned from all current and future flights operated by Skylight Airlines or its domestic affiliates. Your behavior was inflammatory, discriminatory, and disruptive to the safety and dignity of every person on this aircraft. Ethan stood, his voice hot and indignant. You can't be serious. I said what everyone else was thinking. He walks in here, looking like he just rolled out of a gym and expects VIP treatment. Harper stood, phone still rolling. And you expect to keep traveling on airlines built by the very people you insult? That ends today? Ethan turned toward the front of the cabin, but a crew member blocked the aisle. Mateo's voice was crisp. You'll be escorted out after landing. If you refuse, Skylight Security will handle your removal. The ban is already in the system. Ethan sat back down slowly, now cornered by his own arrogance. The cabin was still tense, but the shift was palpable. What had been fear was now resolve. Caleb took one final breath and turned to face the crew jump seat, where Lucas still stood rigid, his hands clasped. Is there anything else you wish to say? Lucas looked down at the tablet still shaking in his hands. Yes, there's something you all need to know. He swallowed hard. There were other complaints about profiling, attire-based assumptions, verbal slights. They came in over the last few months, passengers filing verbal complaints about how they were treated at boarding, in premium cabins, even in lounges. But they never made it to corporate, Harper whispered. Why not? Lucas blinked, shame breaking through his composure. Because we filtered them out. The crew talked about it after shifts. No one wanted to get flagged for bias. There's this unwritten culture that if you rack up too many complaints, you lose prime route eligibility. So we handled things internally. We said we resolved it. We marked complaints as passenger confusion or no follow-up. But it wasn't confusion. It was bias. And we hid it. Harper's hand tightened around her phone. You suppressed evidence. Lucas nodded. Yes, and I'm sorry. We thought we were protecting ourselves, but all we did was protect a pattern. Caleb's eyes didn't narrow. They softened just slightly, with the pain of recognition. How many? Lucas replied quietly. 6 this quarter, maybe more. I only know my own. Mateo stepped forward. Phone still recording. That's a policy breach. Suppressing guest reports violates FAA and internal compliance standards. Caleb nodded slowly. Then we'll treat it as such. I want an audit, full access to internal complaint records for the last 12 months. Every time an attire-based incident was mislabeled, we uncover it. Mateo responded immediately. Understood. I'll alert compliance and start a ledger review. Caleb turned back to Lucas. You're going to assist in this, not because I trust you, but because you owe it to the people you silenced. Lucas whispered. Yes, sir. The rest of the cabin stayed silent, watching this unfold like a live ethics tribunal at 35,000 feet. Jack Hayes finally spoke. We can't change the past, but this feels like the future being built, right here. Caleb nodded. Exactly. What happened here won't be hidden behind corporate language. It will be named and reformed. He turned to Harper. You didn't just film an incident. You filmed a turning point, Harper replied. I just pointed the lens. You lit the truth. Mateo raised the phone. HR confirms all terminations and sanctions are registered. Security will meet us upon landing. Caleb returned to seat 2A, not because it was his by policy, but because now everyone understood it had always been his by right. Caleb stepped back into the galley where Sophia sat alone. Her posture, slumped, head set off, badge surrendered, the weight of what she'd unleashed still sinking in. Lucas stood nearby, silent, his hands clasped behind him like someone awaiting sentencing. Caleb's voice was calm but resolute. Not angry. Just final. Ms. Bennett, your termination is now official. Your access has been revoked. HR will follow up within 24 hours. You are not to resume duty on any Skylight aircraft moving forward. Sophia didn't look up. She didn't argue. Her eyes were unfocused. Fixed on a point somewhere beyond the tray cart beside her, Lucas looked away, saying nothing. Mateo, standing behind Caleb in the galley entrance, tapped the screen of his phone and nodded. Documentation logged. Corporate received it. Caleb turned. To Lucas, you'll remain grounded until compliance completes their review. Cooperate fully, or your suspension becomes final termination. Lucas replied softly. I will. Caleb gave a small nod, then returned to the cabin, walking slowly past rows of hushed passengers. When he reached the aisle between seats 2A and 2B, he turned and addressed them. What happened today doesn't end with an apology. It begins with action. His voice carried clearly across the still air. I've spent years building companies that work better because they see people better. Starting today, Skylight becomes one of them. I'm implementing the Skyfair policy, a mandatory bias training and transparency initiative that will roll out to every cabin crew, gate agent, and executive staffer. No exceptions. Every employee who handles passengers will be retrained within 60 days. Complaints will be logged immediately. No verbal dismissal, no internal erasure. If it's said, it's logged. If it's seen, it's reported. If it's wrong, it's corrected. A few passengers nodded. Jack Hayes clapped twice, softly but meaningfully. Harper looked up from her phone and whispered, That's how legacy begins. In policy, not PR. Caleb turned and met her gaze. And legacy sticks when it's harder than silence. Then, behind him, Sophia's voice came low and cracked from the galley. You think I'm the first? I wasn't, and I wasn't alone. The cabin quieted again. Caleb stepped toward the partition. Say what you need to say. Sophia exhaled slowly. They told us, informally, off record, that if we collected too many bias complaints, we'd lose routes, promotions, bonuses. So we stopped writing them up unless a passenger demanded it face to face. We'd file them as misunderstandings. Or not at all. Harper stood. You're admitting to systemic suppression. Sophia nodded. There were meetings, unofficial, crew talks. We all knew the risk. Too many marks, and your file got flagged. So we kept quiet, and we were rewarded for it. Mateo's jaw tensed. How many people were involved? Sophia stared at the floor. Almost everyone. Maybe not at first, but once you see the consequences of speaking up, you learn to speak carefully. Or not at all. Caleb took a breath, long and deliberate. So this wasn't a training failure, it was a culture failure. Sophia looked up. Finally, it was fear. Not policy, just fear of being the one who ruined the numbers. Mateo looked to Caleb. We can request a system-wide audit, pull complaint logs, identify inconsistencies. Caleb nodded. Do it. I want every discrepancy pulled. If one file was erased, we restore it. If one name was ignored, we read it. Jack stood again, his voice quiet. She may have been wrong, but she's not lying. Caleb didn't disagree. She's telling the truth too late, but not too late to fix it. Then, he turned toward the rest of the passengers. Let me be clear. This airline will change, not because we were caught, but because we chose to correct it before the next person gets denied a seat for wearing a hoodie. Harper lowered her phone, visibly moved. You didn't just fire her, You fired the silence. Mateo. Confirmed. Audit request submitted. Skyfare implementation begins tonight. Caleb sat back in seat 2A. Not with triumph, but with resolve. Good. Now let's take off knowing we've grounded something that never should have been flying in the first place. By the time Skyalite Flight SE-247 landed at JFK, the story had already begun to ripple beyond the cabin walls. Sophia Bennett was quietly escorted off the aircraft by a corporate liaison and security representative. Her badge deactivated, her access revoked. Lucas Reed remained grounded, placed under formal compliance review and assigned to cooperate with an internal audit of flight crew complaint records dating back 12 months. Ethan Ward, visibly rattled, was met at the jet bridge by legal staff and issued a permanent no-fly notice. His name entered into Skyalite's flight risk system. Harper Lee was invited by Skyalite's executive office to join as an independent ethics advisor for the Skyfare initiative. She declined the title, but agreed to consult. On one condition, that the training materials include the full footage from the flight, without edits, without disclaimers. Caleb Sterling didn't hold a press conference. He didn't need one. Word traveled on its own. Within days, Skyalite issued a public statement confirming Sophia's termination, Ethan's ban, and the official launch of the Skyfare policy, a new internal system designed to end the suppression of bias complaints and introduce full visibility into crew conduct, passenger grievances, and training outcomes. Reports that were once discarded were now logged in real time. Verbal complaints once dismissed were verified by passenger statements. And every crew member on domestic routes was given 30 days to complete a new, mandatory bias certification program. Caleb didn't push for revenge. He pushed for structure, for truth that couldn't be hidden behind a tablet or shrugged away with the phrase, "Not on the manifest." Harper's footage, raw, unfiltered, time-stamped, became the core of the Skyfare program, played in hangars and training rooms across the country. Mateo Cruz was promoted to executive liaison for ethics and internal communication. Jack Hayes received a formal letter of thanks from the board, and on the following Tuesday, Caleb received an email. It was from a former Skyalite employee, someone who had quietly left the company 2 years prior. The message read, "I saw what happened. And I need to tell you, Sophia wasn't wrong about the culture. We were told not to log bias complaints. We feared the numbers. We thought we were protecting our jobs. But we were protecting a lie. I filed 3 complaints. And each time I was told I'd be reassigned if I kept pressing. So I stopped. And then I quit. Watching you stand up the way you did made me realize I shouldn't have left quietly. I should have stayed and changed it. I'm sorry I didn't. But I want to help now." Caleb read the message twice. Then he replied, "There's still time to help. We're not just building an airline. We're rebuilding trust. Let's talk." That former employee was rehired as part of Skyalite's new Ethics and Accountability Unit. Their first assignment, audit every suppressed report from the previous 3 years. The legacy Caleb left behind wasn't just in new training or firings. It was in culture, one where silence no longer meant safety, and status was no longer measured by appearance. Months later, as Skyalite published its first quarterly report under the new policy, customer satisfaction reached an all-time high, not because the flights got faster, but because the passengers felt seen. Harper received letters from flyers saying they finally felt comfortable traveling in their own skin, in their own clothes, without needing to dress for respect. Flight crews admitted to seeing their passengers differently. Gate agents paused before assuming, and no one, not a single person, was asked to step aside for looking out of place. Caleb continued to fly Skylight, but now he did so, knowing that the seat he fought for wasn't just his. It was a place made safer for everyone who came after him. He sat in 2A, not to be above anyone, but to show that integrity should never have to dress up to be taken seriously. And to you, the listener, if you've ever been told you didn't look the part, or that where you are isn't where you belong, let this story remind you. You do. You always did. And the moment you choose to stand up, not with noise, but with truth, you create a space that can't be stolen back, because sometimes it only takes 6 minutes to change the altitude of everything.